welcome to Kavdaen's Bargin Bin. I'm your host, Cyro, also known as Trevor, and this is my host, Song. How you doing, buddy?
I I'm certainly doing. It's been a week,
That's relatable.
and also I'm really just ready to talk about Fab stuff. My armory's tomorrow,
Speaking of Fab,
so
it's a great game, isn't it?
it really is.
And more importantly, we are your everyday Joes, and we felt it'd be nice to have some input on the internet that isn't quite as competitive or focused on meta or even just strictly gameplay. So here we are, here to give you
Yeah,
our
we suck
hot
at those
takes and
things.
our mediocrity at best.
Like I said, we suck at these things.
Truly.
I
Speaking of, would you like to share why you suck at these things?
Yes. So I have been playing for about 2 years. I lose a lot. Though once or twice, I believe I've made to the top eight of like a skirmish or battle hardened. Um, I mostly play CC, probably why I lose so much. That's way more competitive than Blitz. But you know what? It works out. What about you?
Well, as you know, I haven't been playing quite that long. I think it's coming up on 2 years though, actually. I can't remember
We started about
exactly.
the same time, I think.
I think I was more, 'cause I know you started during Monarch, and I started
So I bought my
more in Dusk to Dawn.
Dawn. That's true. So for some context, I bought my first packs starting around Monarch, but wasn't really an active player
Mm,
until around Dusk to Dawn. Um, my first my first uh, pack, quote unquote, was really Uprising. I like dragons. Dromai was a good fit. So
yeah, fair. Like I said, mine was definitely Dusk to Dawn era because I played in one armory, and I was given a mat, and it's the stained glass one from the Dusk to Dawn set ish.
it's a good mat.
It is a
It's
good mat,
classic.
but give you a little bit more detail, at least on me. I know we're both judges. You're a bit better one than me.
Yep,
I keep failing.
marginally.
In my defense, I keep failing because I'm too lenient more than anything. Um, but I also worked for our local game store before you moved away, and it unfortunately shut down. So I had to help with the events and everything more than gameplay after a certain point or playing. But I know we've both gone to a couple events, nothing too crazy. I think the biggest ones have been what Rotonats at like 30-ish people, I think. I can't quite remember, but that sounds
About
about right. Um, been to a couple skirmishes. You've definitely been to more events than me, because unfortunately I work too much.
yeah.
But
I don't think too many more than you either. I was a college student at the time,
yeah,
and I
true.
didn't really have reliable.
But I know when it comes to my experiences with the game, like I said, I started more around Dusk to Dawn. Um,
Mhm.
in fact, I got kind of pulled into it by a mutual acquaintance of ours, Pickens, as he likes to be called. And
Oh yeah.
the first time I ever played, because that's always a fun story. We were playing Warhammer 40,000. It was a Saturday, which was the weekly armory event at our location. And he said, like, hey, look, at 2 o'clock, if the game's not over, I'm going to play in this event. I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever, sure. 2 o'clock rolls around, we were about done. So I'm like, I mean, it's close enough to being done. We could just call it here. You can play whatever you need to play. He's like, yeah, that sounds good to me. Do you want to join in? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not really into card games anymore. He's like, come on. I have a deck you can play. No, you don't gotta pay anything. You just gotta sign up for an account. All this and he like he was pretty adamant about it, and
You love good control.
it was like a good 5 minute attempt for him to get me to play this game. And eventually, I'm like, sure, why not? I played Magic before. I know a card game.
One card game.
Oh, was I in for a surprise getting into this? Because It also wasn't well explained to me at the time, like how anything worked.
First games rarely are.
Oh no, this was terrible. Like, I'm surprised I stuck around. It was that bad.
Mm.
um,
Well,
because context, they described the colors of cards, which, if you're unfamiliar, most cards come in three copies unless they're usually of a higher rarity. Those being red, yellow, and blue. And those different colors give you different resources to play other cards. And it was just kind of described to me as you pitch a card to play a card. Red is one, yellow is two, blue is three. Which
oh.
to me sounded more like, hey, if you want to play a yellow card, you have to pitch two cards rather than the yellow card giving you two resources to play a card. So every turn, I was basically getting rid of two cards because I was playing the Bolton Blitz Precon. If you know, you know. It's not very good. So I was basically getting rid of my whole hand to play one card per turn, at best. Like, at best.
Uh,
And also,
yeah,
my second game was against a KO. No, Kano, sorry. Uh, also played by a mutual acquaintance of ours.
that's so much worse.
Yeah, and it
So
was
much
again
worse.
the Bolton Precon. He had one piece of Spell Void, and I think I got one shot turn one, technically, because I think he went first, and then I went, and then he killed me on my turn.
That's Kano.
Like I
That's
said,
Kano
I'm
for you.
surprised I stuck around. I got completely stomped. I had no idea what I was doing the entire time, but here I am.
Well, we are glad you're still here, despite less than ideal conditions. Um, as for me, I have I have several ways I started. I initially got introduced to the game, like Trevor mentioned, back in Monarch. Some friends, I was an avid Magic player at the time, and some friends introduced me to the game as they were starting to fall out of Magic. They had been Magic players for years and years. One of them was a uh, pretty high level judge. He went to a lot of events around the country. Regardless, and they introduced me to the game. I was curious, so I bought a box of Monarch, slapped together a really terrible Levia deck from the cards I pulled. Um, which I never got to use it, but it was a good time. Then a couple years later, I went to a I went to a shop not super close to us, but we were coming home from a vacation and we stopped by a card shop. Um, I was like, "Oh, it's Flesh and Blood." I'm kind of intrigued. I haven't. I've bought it at that point. I bought a few packs, but nothing crazy. I bought a few more packs for fun, and wouldn't you know it, I opened a Coil Plague Hive, which at the time was like $300. So once I did that, I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. And then I started to look more into the game and realized, oh, this looks actually interesting. And it was about this time that Uprising had been out for a while. It
Mm-hmm.
was near the time of Dusk to Dawn, I think a bit before. But wouldn't you know it, um, there was Dromai. And I love dragons. My pet deck for Magic is a Dragon Commander deck. So Dromai automatically piqued my interest, and so I decided to buy some boxes of Uprising and see what I could slap together for a Dromai deck. And I ran that deck until Dromai got LL'd in CC. Still have the deck, and it's been a great time.
Which is always fun. I know for the longest time, I struggled with finding a fun deck. I didn't really find one until
Mm-hmm.
Bravo in Blitz, because, disclaimer, for the longest time, we both just played Blitz because that was kind of the format of our local store. Until, I don't know, the last year or so, um, we all started getting more into CC. CC is definitely our two preferred format. Um, although I know I at least have one for all of the three major constructed formats. I don't know if you have an LL deck yet. That's Living Legend if you're unfamiliar, which is a whole thing.
Tech, technically, I do, because I've had several heroes. LL.
Yeah,
It's a
true.
running joke in our friend group that I accidentally choose the overpowered heroes. I have, from the past several sets, I have played KO, who I wouldn't say is overpowered
He
anymore, but
he definitely
he was
was.
the strongest out of that set.
Yeah.
The strongest out of the set for sure. Enigma, she was a menace to society.
Dromai.
Dromai was everybody hated Dromai. I remember people being so salty whenever I pulled out Dromai, which was frequently. Um, the most recent one was well, Arachne Marionette. Ironically, not the strongest, but I would say
He's
somewhat
doing well
adjacent.
now,
Slippy,
though.
he is doing well. But decidedly, Slippy was the stronger. Arachne slipped the cracks.
Yeah.
For those of you unfamiliar, he was decidedly the strongest. But I really like the spider theming of Marionette, and then Gravy Bones. Everybody who knows Flesh and Blood, who knows the High Seas set, probably is familiar with Gravy Bones. He's the first necromancer. People in my group do not like him, but I'm a dirty Lucius player. I like my allies, and you know what? That's why I like Gravy Bones.
Which, yeah, you're not wrong. You are a Dirty Illusionist player. I can't say much better
I am a
considering.
dirty Lucius player.
I guess the first deck I put in the most effort with was definitely Prism. Awakener of Soul. I can't remember the young version. Technically, it was with the young version first. Um, but I don't really consider her an illusionist. She definitely plays a bit more traditionally card game. She plays more
Yes,
traditionally card game rather than illusionist card game. But she can get a little out of
personally, I
control.
would.
But it takes
Yeah,
up more setup, I feel, compared to most. I am definitely more of the. I either want to kill somebody within like 2 turns, or I'm going to grind the game out. I'm not very good at the mid-range decks in this game, which is weird because in say Magic, I definitely do prefer more of a mid-range deck. Um, but for some reason in Fab, it's either full balls to the wall aggro, or we're going to be here the whole time limit. Because as you know, I
that
played
does seem
Bravo for the longest time. He's actually my most successful deck, even though it was essentially just a budget deck. I'd even have the staple cards in him until actually ever. Just kind of the, I
well.
guess, staple
You had
Guardian
the chess
stuff.
piece.
Like Guardian staples, yes, but not like staples. Which, if you're
Oh well, I
unfamiliar,
see. See,
things like Command and Conquer, Faendal Spring Tunic, and Lane Strike. I didn't have anything like that for him. Although I don't think Faendal was really ever an option. Well, it probably was, but I definitely didn't have any CNCs or E strikes in that deck. But it was definitely my most successful. Uh, and then I have a Bolton deck. I always just keep Bolton because he was the first deck I ever played, so I might as well just keep him around at this point. And then what?
yeah,
Build the OG KO, which is the dice gambling, fun time, goofy stuff. I'm definitely more of the casual player out of everyone that we know. I definitely prefer more just silly things rather than just what's competitively
yeah.
the best option. Examples, of course, being OG KO and playing Yoji as skirmish event. If you know who Yoji is, it's basically just playing cards. You don't have anything going on for you other than what's in the deck, which is always fun, but definitely not a meta pick by any stretch of the imagination.
No, he's not. And out of the two of us, I'm definitely more competitive. I wouldn't say I'm as competitive as some people in our little group, but definitely a lot more competitive than you. Um, I don't I don't lean as much towards the meta picks on purpose. If you heard my deck list, I do tend to play more meta heroes, but it is usually
It is
somewhat
usually
unintentional
it is
at
usually
first.
unintentional, and then it's like, well, I already have it,
Um,
which is fair.
might as well. Yeah. But I do definitely lean more competitive, but I'm trying to branch out into newer horizons. I would really love one day to not be the oops oops all meta guy, because it's honestly kind of annoying. at certain points. Mostly because I actually like my heroes. Though I did try to build Ocilio, I couldn't deal with him and how he felt more like a middling lightning uh rune, more like a worse Aurora at the time versus a wizard proper. When I think wizard, I think more KO gameplay, even though Kano gameplay, even though
Look, those two are
Kano,
impossible not to mix up every once in a
yeah,
while.
they're it's the same name just with one different.
Exactly.
Um, but Cilio didn't go anywhere until he's starting to get traction. But regardless, um I do tend to pick meta. My pick, by the way, let it be stated for Super Slam because it is not out yet as of the recording of this episode. Pilot, whatever the fuck, I don't care. I'm going for reviled KO, which is either going to be really good, knowing my luck, he'll be somehow stupid bonkers, or he'll suck ass, and I'm kind of hoping he sucks, just so I have an excuse next time somebody's like, "Well, you picked the meta one," so I'm like, "Nope, reviled KO right here. He's terrible, and
And
I still play
technically,
him."
te-
But I
and technically, with the
uh,
hunted, you picked uh, Mario,
I did pick
Arachne
Mary. Yep.
Marionette, over Syndra, who is kind of, well, at least at the time, was definitely the standout star of the hunted. I mean, she has fallen to the
Yeah, and I,
wayside some, but that's more just because the meta changed.
yeah, I do think that Syndra struggles against Gravy because her attacks tend to be smaller, um, especially with the dagger focus. So that makes things more difficult. And Slippy, Slippy kind of ended up overtaking her with just some of the power, but with the Bonds of Agony ban as of I believe this past Monday,
I
um,
think.
there's yeah, it was this past Monday because it's Labor Day.
Oh, yes.
But there is word that he's probably going to fall off some. We'll see. I honestly think he might stay fairly okay, but we'll see. But I did end up picking Marionette, and um, like I said, I chose Marionette because of the spider theming. So
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I'm not a ninja player.
I kind of not either, but at the same time, it's a little fun, given the fact I did try to build Zin, and then realized how horribly, horribly broken he was, and I immediately stopped playing him.
Um, you did build Ira. You have an Ira
I do
deck in the
have an
making
Ira
or
deck,
made.
but it's more just Zin, but Ira, because I didn't build Zin like the competitive, really good, you know, just combo cards win deck. I just built him as a Tiger deck still, and it was still way too good, which is insane. So I basically just built Ira as Tiger Ira again because I don't know, I like the Tiger gameplay, but we're getting a little off track.
We are getting off track.
I can't remember the track was though, so I think we're just lost.
You know what? It's going to happen a lot knowing us.
Oh, absolutely.
Very easily sidetracked.
Um, I know we did touch that we're both judges. I know, like I said, you're a level one, I'm a level zero, mainly because I'm really bad
Yes.
at the I can't remember what the actual test is called, but it's the punishments. I'm just going to call it punishments because that's what it is. Side of things, I think it's
Yeah.
the REI uh, rulings test. I can't remember exactly, but I know that we've also
Yeah.
started that
You're a
around
good
the
look.
same time, and it's recent.
Yes. I believe
I've yet to pass
nearly on
that.
the same day, I think.
I think we did at least
Um,
start the level zero one on the same day, and then I think you jumped to the level one a couple days sooner. You passed, I failed, and I keep failing because again,
yeah.
I'm just not good at giving out rulings on like, oh yeah, that's a IP2. No, that's a game loss, or that's nothing. Just keep playing. I'm not good at that because I'm a little bit too lenient.
Though, like, though, I will say there are many times where I prefer a lenient judge, especially with newer players, which is large our community was for a while.
But yeah,
Where if I would say that there are definitely times where a more lenient judge like yourself is probably better for, at the very least, the enjoyment of the game for players, where sometimes a more harsh judge can kind of deter players from wanting
Of
to
course,
continue.
being a level one though is kind of meant more for like actual events rather than a level zero. Level zero is kind of what all you need to be
Yes.
for like armories or learn to play or anything like that. So that's understandable. Um, Speaking
Yeah.
of learning to play in armories, I know we didn't do a whole bunch of them in the last while, but like I think I mentioned it
It's been
earlier,
summer.
a lot of the ones we did do were mostly Blitz, which thinking back on, that's a terrible way to get people into the game if you really like want them to stick around, just because it is such a feast or famine type of format. I know we're getting way off topic, but this is where the hot takes begin. I told you we're going to have some of those. And I don't think it's that hot of
See,
a take, though, is the thing.
I I do agree to an extent. I do think that, well, Living Legends has not been out long, is still relatively new compared to Blitz and CC, which have been around since the beginning of the game.
Yeah,
But I do think Living Legends, I would say, is probably, I would argue, is worse than Blitz because of the power creep with some of these decks,
I'd agree.
especially with like Old Him and Briar,
Well, I don't think
which
Ultim
we
would
can get
be,
more into.
but
We can get more into some of the Briar stuff with in a bit, but I do think I partially agree. I think Blitz is a good way as long as he is on the same field. Like if you have two people who are just learning the game and they both pick up like a Blitz starter deck, I honestly think that's probably not bad. I do personally believe that the first strike decks, I almost forgot the name of those,
those are
were a very
great.
good way to, yes, they were very good. It was a good way to introduce people to the game. Um, and I do hope that uh, LSS does continue those. We'll see. But um,
I also,
but at the same time,
I was
I
just,
feel like in the more, hmm,
I was
okay,
just gonna say, I also think another great introductory thing was something like the Gravy Bones deck that came out
of the
with.
armory decks,
Yes, because it could be either a
yes.
CC deck or a Blitz deck, which is really nice. So you're not having to like some of these cards aren't that great in this form or that format, which I'm sure is kind of just the case with the Armory deck and Armory decks in general. They're like kind of like meant to be
Mhm.
not the best, but good enough. But I like the fact that it's
It's,
really meant to be both at the same time, rather than just like, oh, this is my CC deck, but we're playing Blitz. Let me just pull out the extra copies.
yeah, I do agree with you there, and I also do agree with you on the, oh, this is my CC deck. Let's pull out the copies to make a blitz. It's really annoying, but but I part of why I partially disagree with you. I do think blitz is
Ooh,
people to learn marginally simply because it is faster, and that is some, and I know for a lot of people that's more attainable. I know in my family, they're not really game players, but if it's fast enough they'll usually try it.
mm-hmm.
Whereas for other people, sometimes having that, or sometimes other people like me personally really like longer games and being able to have more of that interaction. Um, that being said, I do also agree with you though that Bliss can be really feast or famine, especially with certain matchups like, I would say, Brute, um,
Oh yeah, Brutes are.
sub
Ooh,
illusionists. Uh, they can very easily just curb stomp you into the dirt in no time simply because of how aggressive they are,
mm-hmm.
and the much more limited life pool. It can definitely create a bit of an imbalance
Oh yeah,
compared to CC.
especially if you have something like the original KO just swing in for 20 some odd damage, and you have one card in hand, and it's like, well, I guess that's game.
Guess I'm dead. Yeah.
Which,
See, but that's actually funny compared to some people.
yeah, it's at least a chance for it not to happen, but uh, it
Yeah.
feels bad if you're like on the receiving end, because I definitely had a couple instances. It was mainly with Zen. Whenever I did have him, I played him a couple times with some people who are newer. Sure, they were borrowing like my decks, which are at least tuned to a degree, or something like that. But it was still like, well, I'm supposed to throw out 30 some odd damage to you in like the first couple of turns, and it's like, it feels real bad. It feels real bad,
Yeah,
and it definitely kills some of that wanting to continue trying to get onto the train. But I also agree though, if everyone's kind of on the same page, it's a lot better. Mainly if they're all just using deck straight off a box rather than anything pre-constructed, because there's such you know, a wild spectrum of constructed decks rather than pre-constructed decks. So like you might think you
yeah,
have a good deck, but then you roll up and you're playing against a Kano who one-shots you, or a Blaze, or you know KO, or even if like a Guardian has like really good opening hands, the first couple of hands where they just throw out enough disruption and just raw damage where like, well, I can't do anything, I guess, and you just get clobbered into the dirt.
yeah. This is perhaps another hot take, but um, I do kind of think that armories, to an extent, have become almost too competitive in certain aspects because I do think that I know that armories are supposed to be kind of like the bread and butter of the game.
Hmm. The
Um
Friday Night
the
Magic
star-
of, for those who are more
yes,
familiar
exactly the
with.
comparison I was about to make. But I know that when I was starting out, if it weren't for the fact that I did a lot for what she was, I definitely think that there were times where I probably was kind of agitated about the fact that agitated about the fact that like there's only so much you can do in a non-tuned deck compared to a really tuned deck, and those really tuned decks are, I feel like, so prevalent in armory, which is supposed to be a more casual thing. Um, which is why I would argue that having armories that try to have a more beginner friendly application, such as, I don't want to necessarily
Ooh,
sealed or something, may be better in certain aspects if you there's a lot of people who have stronger decks, or perhaps even just find one that is more beginner friendly.
I see.
I do think that is something that
Well, so you do keep cutting it in and out a little bit here and there, but I think your message mostly got through. Um, but yeah, no, I also agree.
I
Like,
try
I
to.
think armories are a bit too competitive sometimes. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it definitely
Mhm.
can be if it's done too much. Like, there needs to be a nice little balance. Like, if like a big upcoming event's happening that a lot of your player base is planning on going to, like the couple of armies leading up to it, that makes sense. Everyone's kind of like trying to lock in a little bit, tune up their decks, try to figure out like what's best, for what they're trying to do. But for like the regular average everyday other week, I don't think people need to bring their like 500,000, $1,500 decks and be like, "Hi, hello, I'm here to crush your balls."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm so Project Blue is still relatively new, and to an extent I feel
Oh,
like it is more friendly to it is more friendly to, like, maybe not cheap gameplay, but beginner friendly. Beginner friendly is
mm-hmm.
what I'm looking for. So so to that extent, I do hope it works out because I would really like to see a more beginner friendly format for armories, and just to help people learn without being thrown to the wool, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Which I know, if I'm not mistaken, there are options for that for organizers, mainly game stores, everything like that, to actually set up their armories to where it's like, hey, this is a pre-constructed armory event. Like you can only use a pre-constructed deck, or it's a sealed thing, or this or that, and it's publicly advertised. I guess is the word I want to use as that,
Mhm.
which is nice that those are options. Of course, you have like the learn to play events for armories as well, where you're supposed to use the learn to play Ira deck. But I'm sure that you can get away with maybe using some just pre-constructed decks as well, as long as they're not and actually, I don't want to say competitive, but a bit more formidable deck than your
Yeah.
regular blitz precons. I'm sure that's not what the official like policy is on that, but I don't see why that wouldn't be a problem. But like I said,
So
I know there is definitely pre-constructed armory options, which would be helpful, but I know a lot of people also don't kind of care, which is kind of a bad
mhm.
thing at the same time. Because I know it's not magic where you can kind of get away with anything as long as you're going to have kind of a good time. Some most of the time, as long as you get to do like a little bit of a thing. Fab can be a little feast or famine in that aspect, and it does feel bad, but it's not necessarily always a terrible thing. Like I said, I got absolutely
Mhm.
mollywopped. Actually, I got absolutely mollywopped for like the first 6 months I played. I don't think I won a single armory, like a single game, until I finally bought the Bravo Precon, and I beat you. Funny enough, I think that's the first time I ever won.
I was about to say, I think I remember that being times you won was against me playing Dromai, and it
Hmm.
was a bit of a worse matchup, but that was also a very well played, very close. I do remember fairly clearly.
Oh yeah,
We were both down to our last few cards.
I think we were like a single digits, sub five, the last few cards in the decks. Finally, just like managed to eke out the win with again a precon against like your quite tuned deck, but it was like also a really hard matchup for you, just in general, because
Yes.
I don't think anyone really played anything that countered you at all until that point. And I was still kind of the only person who
No.
ever did. Mainly, we didn't have that many people in our local scene, but it's fine.
Yeah. People were so salty about that deck. It's still funny to me
I mean,
how mad people got whenever I pulled.
I got a
I mean,
little.
to be fair, I'm sure it was annoying,
Oh
but
yeah, it was terrible, absolutely terrible. But I mean, people
but
could say that about any deck, really. If they
most
have
decks I
bad
play,
any bad experience with it, it's like, not this fucking
most
guy
decks I
again.
play.
Me with Kasai anymore. Like I just hate seeing that bitch because it's always whenever I'm playing Prism and I'm like, God damn it, there goes my day.
No, I get that. It's because Kasai is kind of in a similar boat for Gravy. Was not that way at all for Enigma. People hated Enigma. People hated Dromai. People hate most things. Play,
Well, it's because most people hate
but
illusionists, as they should. As a
yeah,
fellow illusionist
that's
player,
true.
we should all hate illusionist players.
Yeah, I agree. I am a scumbag for being an illusionist player, but you know what? I have a good time, and that's what's important.
Eh,
Um, I never said I was. I never said I was the nicest. I feel like we are getting off track again,
oh, we
though.
always do.
So
I say it
that's
was
we
mainly
do.
just what judge things into local events. That's how we got to this point, I think.
That's correct. Actually, that does remind me of a point I was going to make. So, from a judge perspective, I
Hmm.
do believe that learn to play events are their own thing that do specifically focus on those learn to play decks.
Hmm.
I believe for technical reasons, the learn to play decks would be needed for a proper learn to play
Of
deck. I know
course.
that we were talking about a casual thing, but that is definitely a thing that is relevant to the conversation nowadays.
Hmm.
Though I will mention, in case you have not seen, and this is relatively new, but Bravo actually is one of the new learn to play characters.
I
They
think
made a
you
new
did
Bravo.
show me him, if I'm not mistaken.
I did at one. I did at one point, but I mean, I'm not sure how much you paid attention to that, and it's been a few months, so
True.
I would not begrudge you for forgetting. I actually did get those when I went to Gen Con this
Oh.
year, so I have two of them. I got one for me, and I did a small game with my dad at the convention. So
Hmm. How'd that go?
it was a good time, but it was like I said, it was a good time. He did end up winning. Um, I'm not going to say that I pulled my punches, but I did a little bit um, because I have to be a dick. But it was a good game. I do think that there was this was the I believe the global like pre release of Master Pack Guardian, which
That makes
um,
sense, yeah.
and also Smash Palace, which is part of the reason why the focus on Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
Smash Palace, for those who don't know, is kind of, I don't want to say quite like a board game, but it is a more multiplayer focused experience. Kind of like if ever anybody knows about Ultimate Pit Fighter or UPF. Um, it is essentially a more directed version of that, with an emphasis on Guardians against Guardians, trying to make
Hmm.
things a little bit less chaotic and more targeted. So, because in with regular UPF, you have no idea what's going to happen. It could very easily be just, oh, somebody's playing Kano and doesn't have to look, zap zap, and everyone dies around them.
Like the one time I
Where this is
remember
more
playing against
where
Chain and just getting nuked turn one. I'm like, brother, I just took 19 damage since the very first turn. What the fuck?
yeah, but this is Smash Palace is supposed to be a lot more focused. I sound
Mm-hmm.
like a shill, but that's fine. But it's supposed to be more focused, and hopefully more of a directed version of UPF that makes it more accessible and less up to up to chance on what happens.
Okay. Well, thank you for that wonderful talk, Song the Shill.
It's my pleasure. I try my very best.
No, I mean, I hadn't even heard of that before, honestly, but I'm also kind of like, I'm not super, super keeping up with things as much anymore, just because, like, I gotta be an
Busy
adult, I
lives.
guess.
Yeah, it sucks.
Unfortunately, I gotta
I
be an
get it.
adult. But it's just
And
also, I'm
well,
not
and
very good at
with
keeping up with things either, just in general. Like,
yeah,
even things I really love, like Fab or Warhammer. If thank God you can't see this shelf over here. Um,
well, and I'm sure it's harder with the departure of the LGS nearby. The
mhm.
closest one to you that I know of is like what, an hour away,
Um, the one that has
thereabouts.
Fab events is more like an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah, so it that does make it harder. I feel like it's
Oh, so you cut
in
out there.
your oh, I said I do feel like it's harder to keep up with stuff when it's kind of in base,
Hmm.
but well, it's easier to keep up with it. Is what I meant to say. But once it's gone, it is harder to keep up unless you make a effort to do so. But who wants to make an effort when you're not able to really experience it?
Which is, yeah, kind of a shame. But I know there's another LGS that's a little bit closer to me that's maybe looking into it, and I've already done. Um, I'm sorry if my cat comes through because she's being a bit of a brat right now. But another more local LGS is maybe thinking about getting into hosting Fab and like supplying Fab. And I know I've been up there once already trying for, demonstrations. No one showed up for it because it was kind of shared on their social media day of, but I think we're going to keep trying at least whenever mainly I can because I'm probably the most reliable one to be able to do anything like that with them. Hopefully that picks up because that'd be really fun to have something a little bit more local again that I can actually reliably go to.
Yeah, and I've been over the summer. I've been traveling to various stores across our state, and some of the neighboring one. I live near the border of our states, but
Hmm.
I've been traveling trying to find one, see if there's a good community. And so far, none of the ones I've seen have a ton of players, but everybody so far has been at the very least courteous, and it's been a good time. But luckily, there is one that's about a 45-minute for me on Mondays, so that'll be what I'm doing tomorrow evening. So it's still pretty small, but at least there's something going on because otherwise I don't get to play.
God, I feel that most of the time. But I know we kind of touched on it a little bit with like events, just to kind of give like a little bit of a credential for why we feel we at least kind of know what we're talking about when it comes to gameplay. I know you said that I know you've done a couple top cuts. I haven't gotten quite that good. Like I am definitely the most mediocre
Yeah,
out of all of us gameplay wise, but it's also because I kind of just don't care enough.
yeah. I think I've
Um,
made two. Not much, but
but still,
at least I have at least once or twice.
probably more than most people out there. Like I said,
Mhm.
me included. I know the best I've ever done is 2-2-2. That's 2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses in a. I think it's a Rodonats. I can't. I think it was, or was there ProQuest?
I
Not
It
ProQuest,
was
but
one of the two.
what's ProQuest?
To be fair, I still think that you probably deserve to get uh, more wins because it was just because time ran out. Otherwise, beat.
Yeah, still,
Um,
I'm still over the moon, even a year and a half
yeah.
later, about that performance with Bravo, the budget deck.
Has it really been a year and a half?
It's probably
Crazy.
yeah, if not longer actually, but it's been at least a
I
year.
just Yeah. This is entirely off topic. I just remembered I need to get swing bigs for brute. I never did get those, and you still have them,
Well,
and I
yeah.
can't just move. I mean, I don't mooch off you much anymore because we're not that
Can you
close.
stop?
But uh, man, I really need to get those, especially with KO coming out.
Oh yeah, definitely. But I know we've also went to a lot of the same events, other than the couple that you went to without me
Yes,
because I just couldn't make
life.
it. I think I was working 2 jobs at the time. It was really hard to find any free time. Um,
I understand that.
but I know my last event was a skirmish, blitz skirmish in particular, where I rolled up with Yoji, and I think you were playing. Who were you playing that
I
time?
was playing. I was playing KO. I remember
That's
because I got
right.
mollywopped uh, by a Riptide player. He's one of the better players, not only in our area but honestly in the country. And
Unfortunately,
um, yes,
mainly because we have to play against
and
them.
unfortunately, yeah, and unfortunately, it did not go too well for me. I ended up losing to his massacring army of traps. I was honestly rather upset about that, but it
Which
is
I
what
mean,
happened.
that's playing against
Um,
Riptide.
yeah, it is playing against Riptide. Um, but yes, that was the same event.
And I know I did
I think you have a
okay.
point there.
I usually only ever win like 1 round per event at best. I
Yeah,
think funny enough, that event I won against OG KO, which if you're unfamiliar, there are 2 different KOs you can play Blitz. The one that came out in Crucible, I think, or was it
I want to
Arcane?
say,
It was one of the two. I know that one for sure. His whole mechanic is he rolls a die every time he attacks with basically anything, and if it's a 1 through 4, it gets halved. It's a 5 or 6, it gets doubled. Very funny. My favorite Blitz deck because it's gambling. You can't be mad if you lose against this deck just because like it's chance. Um, but I played against that with Yoji and I managed to win because the poor man, I don't think he rolled high once that entire game. I think, and I just like lull him out. I'm just going to block it all because I was playing a Guardian. Um, it's funny enough. The only other time I think I've won that wasn't the 2-2-2 because I've only think I've been to 4 events in total. I was playing OGKO and I just completely mollywopped a poor Azalea player because it's a Ranger versus a Brute. It's not it's not going to go well for the Ranger most of the time, especially it's more traditional Ranger rather than Riptide. But that's also kind of like why I say
that's
I'm the
fair.
more casual player out of our little group.
Yeah,
I take Yoji to events unironically.
I mean, you take OGKO to events, unironically.
Yeah,
So
but at least he has a real ability. Yoji just doesn't do anything. He has 22
that is
health.
true.
That's his gimmick.
That is true. Though I did check actually, it's Crucible. You were right. It was Crucible.
I thought so.
I'm trying to think. I've taken a lot of different heroes. I tend to kind of flip flop around heroes a lot. I
Hmm.
know I just finished Puffin, so she'll be who I'm focusing
Nice.
on well my events tomorrow
Hmm.
because I need to get a feel for her. But it'll probably be between Puffin and Gravy for a while, just so I can try and get a better feel for the deck. Though I did finally get more used to Gravy's game plan, only for the stupid Tibbles to be banned. So I'm going to make quick changes to that deck before I use it again.
Hmm.
Um, but I do tend to flip flop around heroes. I think a lot more
Nope. I say a lot
Foundation.
more. You cut out there for a moment.
I tend to be a lot more. You tend to be a lot more consistent because you have only a to be drawn to anything that catches my eye, if I remember correctly.
Damn. For some reason, you keep cutting in and out. But I think the general gist is that you flip flop a lot more because you just kind
Yes.
of bounce between things that are kind of interesting. I know I kind of can't play the same hero all the time. Like I'm definitely not that kind of player, but I definitely don't have the largest pool. Currently, it's mainly just I almost said gravy, Jarl, Prism for CC, and really just kind of KO for Blitz, mainly because I just don't also play Blitz. Yoji's kind of on the back burner just because I don't know. I need to
He
fix
was
him
a
up. Well, I need to more fix him up because he did have the count your blessings in him, so that's why he's kind of on the back
those were
corner
drunk.
burner. And then
He
I
was also
do.
more of a meme deck for you.
I mean, so is
So
KO, but
yeah, but KO actually has potential.
I feel
Yoji
like
is kind of just Guardian.
I feel like Yoji can do something, but I kind of don't want to try like the tried and true method of what he does, which is just gain 20 gazillion life and then just hit you with a hammer the rest of the game. I want to kind of play more
That
like
is fair.
the intended Guardian gameplay. And then
Very fair.
I do have a Briar LL deck, which I think we can maybe talk about how this past skirmish season 12 has gone.
That is true.
Because unintentionally, I made the top deck. Not, one to one,
Not exactly.
because I don't really net deck much if I can help it. But I did make a hero who, as of the final standings, had 41 wins, with the second highest being 27. So
Yeah.
a
Uh,
little bit of a discrepancy there.
I mean, I will say that kind of to a bit of a similar extent on terms of net decking. I do try to not net deck. At least I try to
Hmm.
be fairly original in my deck list. Though if I'm struggling, I will often take to the internet Fabrary. If
Hmm.
you don't use it.
It's
It's
great.
very helpful. But I will oftentimes go there and kind of
Yeah.
look at other people's decks just to
Get
compare
like
and
an
contrast. But I do
idea,
try to not.
inspiration for
Yeah,
like oh that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have thought of putting this thing in that or that thing in this. Yeah, which is
yeah,
I also do that, but I definitely try to at least start from the ground up. Like okay, what do I want to try to do, and I build up from there. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, with because I'm not too familiar with the Living Legends meta at all. Like I'm surprised by most of these standings on this list, particularly with Dio, that's Dash IO for those unfamiliar, who had the third highest wins at 14. I
Hmm.
haven't looked. I looked into a little bit, mainly with Ira because she's the last one I've seen. Which is interestingly enough, she's kind of just a flick knife build, which I'm surprised it's doing that well, considering you have you know people like Syndra, whose whole shtick is supposed to be flicking knives, but apparently Ira's just the better flick knifer, at least in LL. I don't think she's doing quite as well in just regular CC, so I'm really interested in seeing like what makes her tick.
I that is understandable. I am kind of interested. I did recently counter
Oh,
actually.
I think we cut out there for a second.
She Oh, I'm apparently going to do that a lot. I did actually encounter an Ira recent. It was just a little. It was a build off of the Armory deck, and honestly, it
Hmm.
looked rather enjoyable. It made me interested enough that I almost want to get the armory deck for myself, just to kind of look into it.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, I'm not super surprised that Briar's Rosetta. She's had a lot of support.
Oh,
Same with Everbloom. Everbloom in life, technically, but who cares?
yeah.
Everbloom coming out is a very strong Earth card.
Hmm.
Um,
But I think,
uh,
sorry, I think typically, at least the last Briar list I saw, which is one of the winning ones, it's kind of just the Cheerio list, which, if you're not familiar with what the Cheerio list is, it's just all gas, no brakes, and that's kind of it. Which I'm surprised if that's kind of like the meta currently for Briar. I'm surprised it's doing that well. Like I know it's a really strong list, at least it was back whenever it was a CC standard uh, deck. But I'm just kind of wondering why it's such a good list in a format where basically anything goes.
that is a good question. But I mean, though we have seen the success of Aurora, uh, and Briar, I think, has the ability to play either Aurora or Florian, who both for a while have done really well. In fact, I believe Florian is starting to look up again
I
with
do
the
believe
unbanning
so.
of German names. Um, but but it does kind of make sense because she has the, I believe, really either to various extents. So I'm not super surprised,
Mm-hmm.
but I have not yet seen the deck lists,
Yeah.
so
Well,
I
I'm going to, I don't know if I can send it to you without
yeah.
also,
I'm a little though surprised about Dash IO. She's
yeah,
been doing a lot better than
because
than I thought she ever
I'm
would.
actually looking at, it's a, it's last battle hardened, um, Living Legends, Ira list, and it is basically just all flick knife related stuff. Like it has blood splattered vest, flick knives, of course, mask of momentum, uh, tide flippers, has three Zephyr needles, which is interesting. But then the cards in it are like Bittering Thorns, Bleed Out, Command and Conquer, of course, because
It's CNC.
yep. But Sensors
We
in
know
there,
it.
which I find interesting. Snatch, of course, because it's Snatch. Upsticks and Run is, I think
That
it,
doesn't surprise
I
me.
think it's Rainbow Upsticks and Run by looks of it. So yeah, they have 9 copies of it in total. And then it's
Random
pick up the
sticks.
point, uh, pain in the backside, of course warmongers because it's warmongers. Same thing with weakest link. Ripple Waves is kind of an interesting choice, but it makes sense at the same time. But yeah, a lot of these cards are like all focused around the dagger, and of course this isn't, like I said, it's not a skirmish list, but it's a battle hardened list from the 30th, so the one in Orlando. And then I'm trying to see if I can find one of the, I guess, no, that would have been, would that have been one of the skirmish games that battle hardened?
I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure what they're considering the skirmish season for LL because I know I'm whenever I hear skirmish I think blitz, but it might just be what they're kind of calling any of the
Hmm.
any of these events. That's a classic constructed one. Commoner. Hadromi won a commoner event. Look at that.
Nice.
Indeed. Like that's the only first place list I'm seeing on here at least. Um, hmm, let's pull up a Briar. I'm on the, if, in case you don't know, you can go to tcg.com and look at all the winning or top placing deck lists at any point. I don't think they've actually updated it for, or maybe they just haven't placed any of these lists up for some reason or
They
another.
tend they tend to be kind of weird. The most recent I saw.
Oop, so you cut out there again.
Oh, I said the most recent I saw was August 30th of this year.
Yeah, like I said,
Um,
that was the
that was the IRA.
yeah, which is like I said, interesting. And then let's see. Let's pull up Living Legends. Can you? I'm sorry if you can hear my cat. She's being quite annoying. KOLL, Starvo, Balls and Plunder. That's the name for a deck. Let's see if we can find a Briar deck that actually has. It's a 3-0 deck, at least on the 30th. It's on Fabrary. Use Fabrary, kids, if you don't already. Uh, and it seems to be kind of, like I said, I gotta wait for it to actually load all the way, but yeah, it seems just kind of like a Cheerios list. It's mostly red cards. Burn Up Shock, Channel, Mount Heroic, Lightning Surge, Plunder Run, Ravenous, Snatch. Snuff Out's interesting. I probably wouldn't have thought of that myself, but and then of course the Skizix and Skyward Serenade combo, which if you're going to run Briar,
Mhm.
you might as well run that. And then what was it, Everbloom? Yeah, Everbloom is in this list at least. So you were right about that one. But it really doesn't have a whole lot of blue. I was what, 6, 9, 12, about 19 blue cards in the whole thing. 4
Hmm.
yellows, and then everything else is red. Equipment is just kind of, ma'am, sorry, being meowed at. A Dyadic, Face Purgatory, Faendal's Grasp, of course, Lightning Greaves, Shock Charmer, Snapdragons, Rosetta Thorn, because, like, if you're going to play Runeblade, why aren't you playing Rosetta Thorn?
Agreed.
But yeah, that's a 3-0 list. It doesn't say what event, but it is a 3-0 list. And that's kind of the only one I'm seeing that has any sort of. Well, this is a Skirmish 12 first placing deck list, I'm guessing. And it seems to be the same thing. Essentially just a
Well,
Cheerios list,
it,
which is interesting. I know
mm,
mine isn't quite this. I think I play my LL list is probably more mid-rangey rather than just straight gas, no breaks. Um,
mhm.
but it's interesting to see that essentially the same list that she ended CC in is kind of just her LL list as well, with a couple new tools here and
Yeah,
there.
yeah. That I mean that makes sense.
Hmm.
But it does make sense. I am kind of surprised it isn't quite as heavy. I kind of figured it would be with all the, uh, especially with how expensive Earth cards are, but how strong some of those Earth cards are. But I can't say I'm, I guess, particularly surprised
I'd
that
say
it's just kind of
my educated
Cheerios.
guess is it's not really meant to want to run those Earth cards because they're kind of more like mid-rangey, late gamey focused with like Decompose and all those other new mechanics introduced in Rosetta. So I don't think she wants them just because she's just trying to end the game as soon as she can. Like she's just trying to throw out enough damage to
Mhm.
beat your ever living shit out of you. Like I'm still kind of surprised with Ira kind of just being at least the one list I saw. I probably should have pulled up some more, but it just seems to be kind of a flick knife, good stuff build.
I am honestly not as surprised because I have seen there was a lot of speculation when the Hunted came out that
Hmm.
Ira would become best deck in format with the how much she could do with the
True.
up sticks and flick knives to the point people were like, "Oh, up sticks is going to break the game," and then their response instead was to ban, well, mostly with Zephyr needles, but and then they got rid of Zephyr needles
Hmm.
to deal with the problem before it became a problem. Um, and so I'm not too surprised by Ira just being flick knives good stuff, but it is what it
Cat,
is.
please stop. She's being a little excessive over here. Sorry, I'm also trying to find it. if I can see anything on February for tournament decks, which does not seem to be. Most recent ones were from December of last year, which is definitely not what we're looking for. So let's just try the other way. Ira. Come on. Let's see. Ma'am, nobody asked you. That's a third place one. Battle Hard in Singapore. That is from July, but that's, I think, skirmish season. I'm not going to pretend.
That's pretty close.
And yeah, it's just a flick knife build. This one does have erase face though, which is an interesting choice. I like it. That was one that the other list did
Erase
not have.
Face was Erase Face has been very popular. I think it was to mostly target.
Ooh,
Um,
this one's fun though. It has a whirling mist blossom in it. Just one, but it has one.
Running Mist Blossom is a really solid card.
It is, but it's like it's okay. It has a crouching tiger in the token slot. What are you doing to make a tiger? Oh, pouncing paw? Huh?
Hmm.
That's interesting. Has the Robe of Am's Fall in it, which I'm assuming is the armory deck equipment for Ira. Because I've actually not seen anything about this armory deck at this point. Yeah, it
I've heard
seems
it's
like
very. I've heard it's very good.
it seems like it's just kind of the build is flick knives. The what's this one? What's this placing? It's a Uckland 2025 champion deck for culling. And let's see what this is a Dio deck. And it yeah, no, that's about what I was expecting. It's just the boost good stuff. Fast and Furious, a couple items to make use of her ability, of course. Ooh,
When I drop stuff,
I was gonna say,
paying attention. I was like,
you good?
realistically, we probably should have pulled deck. Yeah, I'm fine. I just we probably should have pulled up these deck lists before we started recording, but you know what?
Yeah, well, it helps with the like learning what is kind of happening more than seeing like, oh yes,
Yeah,
let us pretend that we know what we're talking about for a second because we preemptively looked it up because no, this gives you
I
the
mean, we don't know
real.
what we're talking about either way.
We don't. Um, Skirmish Season 12 champion. Let's see what this deck list is. You'll never believe it.
Dryer or Gravy?
Dio.
Oh,
It's just boost good stuff. Although there's a Tome of Faendal in here.
hmm.
That is interesting. It's very interesting indeed. But yeah, it's just kind of a. It seems like it's just a good old-fashioned aggro build. I'm assuming Zen is going to be the same thing as Zen was in CC. Same thing with Dromai, Chain, New, Starvo. I'm kind of surprised seeing um, Oldhim so far down. But I guess he probably just can't keep up with just the raw aggro that the top placing decks are throwing out.
This would be kind of my guess. I'm guessing it's Jarl.
I'm sorry, you cut out again.
It's just so. Oh, I'm guessing it's probably a similar. Um, is Guardians are just in kind of in a. Am I so cutting out?
You did there
This
for
is
a
going to
moment,
happen
but
all the
I
time.
know you said Jarl, and the idea is still going on. I also
Yeah.
think
Um,
Guardians are kind of not in the best spot, at least in it looks like the LL meta. I think everything's a bit too
definitely not
fast for them.
LL. Yeah, I honestly think that Guardians are going to aggro meta starts to really slow down, which it might with Super Slam, but we are getting two brutes and they're usually very aggro, so we'll see.
Speaking of
Um,
that, though, I know we weren't really planning on touching on Super Slam or anything, but the heroes themselves are very interesting design choices.
I do agree with that.
I'm not the biggest fan of any
I
of them, but I'm also kind of just like not the biggest fan of whoops, most of the things um,
yeah,
that have been coming out recently. Just haven't tickled my fancy as much. But I think, at least first guess is I think the one brute. I can't remember his name, but he's the one with only three intelligence. I think he's going to be the most consistently good one, just because like everyone's going to build him having nothing but blues and block for 9, swing for 7 every turn with rock, which is very boring, but it's objectively I think the best way to play him.
Tough Nut. Yeah.
I had Tough Nut as his
Um,
name.
I do think that I do think that realistically he'll be probably better with the clash cards than a reviled KO.
Mm-hmm.
Reviled KO is kind of a weird design. I personally really like it because I do think that it presents an interesting opportunity for some of the attacks that are supposed to be built up on
Mm-hmm.
to have a chance to shine. For example, like Vipox. Vipox is a if you don't know, Vipox is a zero cost red action. Um, Swings for one, but on hit it deals damage equal to cards in hand. With
Okay.
his ability to turn an attack to six, it does actually present more of an opportunity for Vipox to deal the damage
Mm-hmm.
and potentially get the cards out and potentially knock some of that life off with the cards, as well as other cards like Tenacity and Mischievous Meeps,
Mm-hmm.
all which tend to be either smaller cards or kind of build up or be better in areas where they have a better chance to hit. So
But
I
I
think he will have some, but hmm,
I say one card I just now happen to think of that I think is definitely like a prime candidate for this is Fire Breathing, because I think it's only like a 2 or 3 attack, but you pay one resource and pump it up by one. And that's gonna be very funny in that kind of deck.
it is the only reason I would say it might not see quite as much play as the other ones is simply because it costs, I believe, two to play, but it
Mm.
definitely does have that opportunity
Yeah, I
to
think
do
it's
that.
like
Kind of the same as
I think it's kind of more like it's definitely not something that's going to see. I don't think as much play as something that would be a zero cost, but it definitely is something I think in the right situations could be really really good, but it's definitely not like the number one pick.
I do agree. Exude Confidence is kind of similar. I wouldn't say quite as much because Fire Breathing works better in a hand of all blues,
Hmm.
where Exude Confidence, I feel like doesn't quite need the boost as much as Fire Breathing would.
Hmm.
Um,
Come on, camera.
but but Fire Breathing does have potential. You are right about that. Though I would say maybe a one of.
Yeah,
I do think that hmm,
I say yeah. No, I wouldn't put too many copies in a deck either. But continue.
yeah, I do think that both brutes are leaning more being a lot more blue heavy
Hmm.
than previous brutes. I know that KO iteration two or KO with the first KO with one arm, he had a larger focus on the ability to play blues than Reinar did.
Hmm.
Reinar, I know, struggled really. I tended to struggle. Same with Levia because they had a rougher time playing blues because they needed six attacks, which are not common in blue. So they had to sacrifice some of their consistency in order to be able to properly
Their
what
game
is it?
plan.
And yeah, yes, exactly. Where KO didn't really have that issue.
Hmm.
Tough Nut and Reviled KO are both looking to be a lot more similar in aspect to the new uh to KO2 because I can't remember his name. Um
Uh, Armed and Dangerous.
that's it. Thank you. Because they have different ways, but they have different ways of gaining consistency. without necessarily sacrificing the aspect of 6 cost.
Yeah.
Tough Nut he can tap to get a free well free to get a well yes free pitch
Hmm.
and KO can boost up smaller cards, which seems to be a lot of Revile's game plan. Play smaller cards and then boost them uh, through their various abilities. Um, to and then pump them up to 6 attack to kind
Hmm.
of hammer in the extra damage. Um, the Guardians are very different, I would say, from Guardians that we've seen in the past, though.
See, honestly, I don't even really remember what they do because I don't find them that interesting personally. But give me a refresher here.
So, so the two we have are Lyath Goldmane and Pleiades. Pleiades is looking to be a lot more aura focused. Her
That's right.
gimmick
Yeah.
revolves around um, what are known auras that have the suspense ability, which will looks to be new in
Hmm.
Super Slam. Um, and she can gain very and she can move around suspense counters to kind of prolong or shorten the aura's efficacy. Um, Otherwise, she's looking to play a bit more like a normal guardian.
Hmm.
Lyath is interesting because um, the attack and defense of all of his cards are halved, rounded up.
Hmm.
However, he happens to have 5 intelligence, which I
The very
believe is a
first
first
hero.
for
Yep.
this game. Um, and so uh, I am very intrigued to see how Lyath ends up doing. Uh, whether or not his halving of his power will lead him to be weaker than normal guardians, since guardians typically tend to have very strong attacks,
Hmm.
or if perhaps that 5 intelligence will pull through and make him to make him more effective than initially suspected. But I am kind of with you that I think Topnut will probably be the most consistent, though we
Yeah.
have
Just
yet to see
because.
how Pleiades works.
Yeah. I just. I just think that because, like I said, it's very easy for him with Rock just to block, swing for 7 every turn, and seven's like a really hard number to block out as well. But
Mm-hmm.
the one thing I do find interesting with the new gold main, I already can't remember his first name, nor do I really care.
Lyath.
Sure, is the fact that he's obviously not going to be as crush oriented, just because they all require 4 more damage to be dealt, and if it's being
Mm-hmm.
halved, I mean most of them are already only like 8 damage on average, 8 or 9, things like that. So it's going to be interesting to see like what kind of card support he's going to get from the set and what he can make do with existing Guardian cards, mainly ones that don't have Crush, which most of them you kind of don't care about if they don't have Crush, at least at this time. Unless you're just playing like a super specific kind of game plan, like I know what Jarl can do with like Earth cards and even Ice cards to a degree. They typically don't really care about Crush too much, but they have other bonuses they do, which he won't have access to. So it's going to be, like I said, interesting to see what he
Mm-hmm.
does.
From what I'm seeing with reviled heroes, they focus a lot on either buffing their own attacks through various actions or tokens,
Hmm.
while also using Intimidate a lot to remove cards from hand, which makes their attacks
A little bit more
tend to
consistent.
swing. Yes, but it will be interesting because I'm honestly not sure how well that'll work. I have some theories.
Hmm.
I personally do think that Lyath will probably be the most inconsistent of heroes, at least in the beginning. Once people figure out how to run him, he may end up being very good with his 5 intelligence,
Just having 5 intelligence, that's great.
but it is hard to tell at the moment. Um, Whereas, like I said earlier, with reviled KO, I think he has the ability to be very strong by making the what tend to be weaker attack
Hmm.
a chance to not only swing for a pretty decent amount of damage, but also have those debuffs. But I don't know how well he'll play with a lot of the better brute cards, a lot of the better brute cards like pulping and swing
Yeah,
big. So
like
it'll be interesting to see.
yeah, there's like definitely these are going to be much more not quite as staple focused heroes in general. That's for sure.
Which
Because
I will actually say on that note, sorry, I do think that to an extent that is probably a good thing. Do you think trying to have trying to stray away from some of the older staples like
hmm
Command and Conquer and Enlightened Strike can be helpful to newer players.
I meant more like
Which
class staples rather than actual staples.
that is true as well.
Like for
Um,
like brutes, pulping, swing big. Well, swing big is not really that much of a staple, but those kind of cards. Guardians have been like any of the crush cards. If they have anything to kind of like any sort of intimidate effects or dominate effects, that's kind of like always been their thing. Um, it has
yes,
been interesting seeing LSS try to like expand into like the other aspects of classes they've at least started with, like with the equipment destruction with Jarl, because that's been in the game forever now, really. And they're finally getting around to expanding on that a little bit with Pallades. They're kind of trying to focus more on the aura side of Guardians, which have also been around forever and a day. Uh, like I said, it's kind of weird. Like I'm not entirely sure what new Goldmane's trying to get, like what kind of aspect they're pushing with that. But I guess we'll find out whenever we look into more of the cards coming from heavy hitter, not heavy hitters. Sorry, I was last arena focus set Super Slam. Um, with
and
Tough Nut, it's
that'll be
basically
coming
just
out
rock.
in
Like they just want to have someone use
yeah.
rock. Because
Rock, I think, will be consistent. I do think he'll have the capability at full capability. He will
that's
be able to have a slightly better focus on uh, some of the better more classic brute cards. Let's
of
put it that way.
course.
Um, but I do suspect we will see at least a couple decks with that are just a lot of
Oh,
blues and rock.
absolutely. Like if I were going to build Tough Nut, it'd be a rock build, just because like I think it is like objectively the most consistent. It might not be the most fun because trust me, just blocking for 9 and swinging for 3 every turn. Sorry, swinging every turn is objectively good, but not exactly fun.
Hmm. And there are definitely times where that could fall as
Of
I
course.
could see certain matchups being really rough with that, especially with um I would say particularly Kasai, some ninjas perhaps,
Anything with arcane, honestly.
where yeah, well, you're running a lot of blue, so
I
I'm
mean,
not
yeah,
actually
but like
sure.
well, I should say rune blades because you're gonna have to try to like decide. Oh, you're gonna block all the
Rune
rune
blades, yes.
chants, or are you gonna try to block the actual damage coming through, and that's gonna be a mess. I
Hmm.
think illusionist he might have a problem with because obviously if he's running all blues to get the most consistently, a lot of them aren't going to be 6 or higher power, so he's going to have to deal with a whole bunch of stuff on the board.
Hmm.
So there's definitely going to be like bad matchups for it, but I think it's going to be the most consistent like consistent gameplay in because it's
Hmm.
the most simple. Like
Yeah,
it's just block and swing every turn.
it's like Guardians then,
Yeah,
though.
that's what. Trust me, that's why I know it's a very boring play style. But I think with that, I think that would be a good end for today. Because otherwise, we're just going to get into
I do
more and
agree.
more random bullshit. And I don't think,
We will keep yapping. It's what
yeah,
we do. It's what we're known for.
it is. But thanks to anyone who decided to listen to two morons talk for roughly an hour and a half. We hope you have a good one.